Howdy peeps, Stacked here. I wanted to share a few tips that have helped me improve in Trials since its return. Through hundreds of flawless runs, whether I be running single help, double help, or just playing with my mates, I've come to realize my own strengths and weaknesses through repetition. Now, even though I don't consider myself the best player, by focusing on my strengths and picking up on some things along the way, I've managed to reach the lighthouse countless times. Now, whether you guys consider yourselves a good player or a work in progress, there's something to take away from this video. So let's dive in. Tip number 10, learning on the fly. Trials has a lot of moving parts. There's no formula to win every single game. So picking up on player habits, where the enemy team like to push, where the hotspots are for nades, what lanes are being held by a sniper, if the enemy team's grouped up or playing split. These are things that will change from game to game, but understanding the way a team plays is something you'll come to understand over time through experience. So make sure you take notice of the way the enemy team rotates and moves around the map to shorten your learning curve and punish their mistakes. Tip number 9, communication. When you and your teammates are making callouts, it's important to keep them short, sharp, and direct. The information you provide and how quickly you provide it could be the difference between your team getting the first pick or you becoming the first pick.
Johnny Tightlips, can you see the shooter?
I see a lot of things.
You know, you could be a little more helpful.
As a collective, you should be able to fan across an area of the map and communicate and quickly decipher where and how the enemy team is set up. However, make sure to communicate not only the information, but your intentions in a manner that's easy to understand, so your team can establish the difference between general information and a call to action. So many times I've heard players call, "Why didn't you push with me?" Make sure that everyone is on the same page. Sometimes your teammates can be off in their own little world, so try calling out their names and making sure they're on the same page before you push. No one's a mind reader, so you need to be specific. Tip number 8, that I will call the pick. Something that's consistently been drilled into you is the importance of not getting picked. Don't be the first to die. And even though this is true, unfortunately in this game mode, whether it's your team or the enemy team, someone has to get picked first. What to do in those moments is crucial to success. Part number 1, we'll call hip hip hooray. Congratulations, your team has now gotten the first pick. Now has the advantage. Now is the time to celebrate. Make those sloppy pushes and see how quickly your happiness becomes a feeling of despair. To make sure this doesn't happen, move from cover to cover to apply pressure to the enemy team and collapse in a coordinated push to force the enemy team off the res and clean up the survivors. Part 2, we'll call this the recovery. Well, you or your teammate has now been downed by enemy fire, and the enemy team is rushing to kill you and teabag your corpses. Here's what to do next. Decide then and there if you're in a position to hold your ground or get out of dodge. Do not prioritize the res. This frees you up to rotate around the map and find an area where you can bottleneck your opponents into a choke point and make the enemy team push you one at a time, trying to force a 2-on-1 engagement. This could give you the opportunity you need to even the odds and maybe win the round. Both these scenarios rely heavily on coordination and communication. Callouts could turn a bad situation into an advantageous play. If your fire team's well informed, they can punish a sloppy push or get a teammate back into the field of play without any further casualties. Tip number 7, coordination. Try your best to work with your teammates, from holding lines of sight together in team shotting or cutting off the enemy team's escape route when your teammate casts a super. Simple coordination will help cut off areas of the map that the enemy team can use to rotate and helps apply pressure to force the enemy team to make a mistake and create a pick. If your teammate is engaging with the enemy and you haven't got a line of sight, let your teammate know or create an angle to help them. An experienced enemy player will try and force you to engage them one at a time, so don't make it easy for them. Pushing together or collapsing at the right time takes good coordination and communication by all fireteam members. Try not to drip feed into the enemy team by pushing one by one. Organize yourselves to push at the same time. Sometimes, something as easy as counting down when to slide or push together goes a long way. And of course, be patient and wait for your teammate to catch up to push together. Tip number 6, risk and reward. The risks and rewards when engaging the enemy in the Trials of Osiris are not static. Depending on how the match is progressing, the risks can become much greater towards the later stages of the game, depending on the score. So keep these tips in mind when you're weighing up the risks. If you are the only person on your team with a super, then playing your life is more valuable to your team than trading out. If you're too weak to contest, disengage and let your teammate know to come help out. Do not get kill hungry. Understand when you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage in an engagement by chasing down an enemy team and getting baited into a trap. Coming to understand when a gunfight is unwinnable and you need to disengage. If you've been bodied by a sniper or tagged up by a grenade. And most importantly, your life is more important than the kill. Sometimes it's not worth trading out with an opponent to create a pick, especially when supers come into play. If you feel like there's any tips that you've found useful or that have helped you in trials, feel free to let me know in the comment section down below. If you're enjoying the video so far, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to the channel for future content. Tip number 5, strong loadouts. Every game has a meta, and Destiny is no exception. Trying new weapons or going into a match with off-meta loadouts is like putting yourself up shit's creek without a paddle. Not to say that you can't get away with it, but why make it difficult for yourself? Choose loadouts with a short time to kill that complement your playstyle and most importantly, that suit the map. You can find out the meta for each season by looking at the most used weapons on Trials report for that week's particular map. Tip number 4, optimizing your gear setup. You want to try and run a build that complements not only your playstyle, but that also makes you competitive. It's very important to balance these two aspects. It's sad to say, but supers win games. So don't be going into trials with something less than 60 intellect. If you'd like to see how I run my characters, there'll be a link in the description to get the most out of your builds for each character. Tip number 3, positioning. When moving around the map, it's important that you and your fire team fan out in a way that you can hold each other's angles, but also keep an eye out for enemy flanks and advances. A lot of times I'll notice a team huddled together, all looking at the same line of sight in an area of the map. By doing this, it limits the information you receive from not only the radar, but potential callouts from teammates. This allows the enemy team to freely rotate around the map and create angles on your team and collapse on you. Try to make sure that the enemy team can't advance freely without taking damage from at least 2 players on your fire team. Very simple, but very important. Remember, when engaging a gunfight, make sure you're engaging from a position near cover and always have an exit route back to your teammates. Something I've noticed are a lot of players that will overextend and pull themselves out of position trying to create a pick without having an exit route back to their team. This allows the enemy team to cut you off from support and force a 3-on-1 engagement. Tip number 2, opening pushes. A lot of times a round can be determined by the team that is first to the center of engagement, by them setting up their fire team to catch the opposing team while rotating into the map. If you notice that the enemy team is beating you to the center of engagement, or whether you're losing that initial gunfight at the start of the round to sheer dumb luck or skilled opponents, Be prepared to change up your approach if you find it isn't working, changing up your opening push in a manner that takes away the enemy team's positional advantage. Also, make sure that all your fireteam members are on the same page before the round begins. Let them know where you decide to push that round to get the best result from your teammates. And the final tip for today, tip number 1, mentality. All the tips I've provided today are useful, however, they're meaningless without the final tip. You could have the best of everything and a weak mindset and you'd crumble under pressure. When dealing with pressure, remember to take everything in, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Learning to understand the mistakes you make under pressure and try and become more comfortable in those nerve-wracking situations. Remember to brush off bad plays. Everyone makes mistakes. Don't be that guy on your team that belittles your teammates or complains all the time. It doesn't help your team and it puts everyone in a bad mindset. Don't forget, encouragement goes a long way to reshaping a team's mindset, especially when the chips are down. And my favorite, don't give up. Don't you dare give up. It ain't over till it's over. These tips individually are not a recipe for success. Try focusing on a couple at a time and you'll come to notice how well they synergize, and they will add a whole new level to your gaming experience. If you want to see some of these tips in action, I stream trials over on twitch.tv/stacked almost every weekend. The link will be in the description. I hope you took something away from today's video, and I'm looking forward to hearing your success and improvements in trials.